Hey, are you kidding me? Why is Mom eating?
These were the words my husband said to me over the phone while he was away from home for a while for work. The past 5 years that I was married to my husband, our relationship has not been a good one. When I do contact him occasionally, we fight. He rarely came back to the house where my mother-in-law and I lived. Then, he suddenly sent me homemade cookies. When I came home from work, my mother-in-law opened them without my permission and was devouring them. When I called my husband and told him that my mother-in-law had eaten them, he panicked. At that moment, my mother-in-law collapsed. I took my mother-in-law to the emergency room, where I was shocked to learn the truth. I immediately called the police. My name is Eleanor. I am 35 years old and I work at a nail salon. I met my husband Daniel on a group blind date. Colleagues from my nail salon had a group blind date every week. I had been invited a few times, but I wasn't very into it, so I passed most of the time. But one day, I was tricked into thinking it was a girls' night out. Those days, I wanted to be better at nail art, so all I wanted to do was work. The last time I had boyfriend was when I was a student. My colleagues, who were worried about my lack of interest in men, had been planning this party for a long time. It was thanks to them that I met my husband, so maybe it was a good thing that I was fooled. My husband works in real estate. Like me, he was brought to the party by folks to make up the numbers. While everyone around us was having a great time, we were talking in the corner. Apparently, he enjoys cooking. On his day off, he makes elaborate dishes and sweets. Although I am a dexterous cook myself, I was amazed at the colorful and delicate dishes that he made. If you can make such wonderful food, why don't you make it your job? I suggested, but he replied,
It's just right to keep what you love as a hobby.
With a laugh. We made plans to go out for dinner and exchanged numbers that day. A few days later, I was invited to Daniel's house. A little nervous when I arrived, but there was a huge feast on the table. It looked beautiful and tasted very delicious. I was so excited that I was eating vigorously when I noticed him looking at me happily. As soon as we finished eating, he confessed his feelings to me and we decided to date. I then dated with Daniel for 3 years. The food he cooked for me was so delicious that I gained a little more weight than before we started dating. Thanks to him teaching me how to cook, my cooking repertoire has expanded. We also traveled to many places together in search of delicious food. We had been together for 3 years and never had a big fight. My work was going well too, and I was truly happy to have met this man. 3 years into our relationship, he proposed to me on my birthday. I cried when I saw the sparkling ring. I knew that with him, I would be able to spend every day in peace. I was filled with happiness. Greeting my in-laws and the wedding ceremony went without a hitch. Both my in-laws are very gentle and kind people, just like my husband. They welcomed me warmly, as if I were their own daughter. My in-laws have been married for 30 years, and they are very close. When I look at them, I feel I want to get along with Daniel, no matter how old we get. I don't think I'll see them often, because they live far away from us, but I had a feeling we would get along well. Life with my husband was going well too. The one who arrives home early prepares the meals. When I came home from work, my husband would have a feast waiting for me, more than I could eat. When I ate his food, the fatigue from my day's work was gone. My husband watches me happily as I eat. We continue to have the same relationship as when we first started dating. It was after 3 years of marriage that some changes happened to our happy days. My father-in-law suddenly collapsed at work and passed away. Both my husband and I had a hard time accepting the suddenness of the situation. It was my mother-in-law who was even more saddened than we were. They were a very close couple, so it was understandable.
Why?
I didn't know what to say to my mother-in-law when I saw her crying in the hospital. Even after the funeral, my mother-in-law was still exhausted. She couldn't even go to her company, where she had worked without a single day off. And she ended up quitting her job. My husband and I frequently went to check on her, but she never seemed to get better. Every time I went to check on her, I thought about what I could do to help her. One day, when I went to check on my mother-in-law as usual, my husband suddenly suggested,
"Why don't you come and live with us, Mom?"
to his mother. I was surprised because I hadn't heard anything about it. But my husband is an only child, and my mother-in-law has no other family to rely on. As far as seeing my mother-in-law's condition, leaving her alone is just a matter of concern. The only way to cheer her up would be to move in with her. I'm not opposed to my husband's proposal, but I just wished he had told me in advance.
"Eleanor, are you okay with this?"
My mother-in-law was the first to ask. "Of course, I'm sure. Let's live together," I replied with a smile, and my mother-in-law looked happier than she had ever been in a long time. To be honest, I'm a little nervous because I never thought I would have to live with her. But my mother-in-law is a calm and gentle person. I'm sure it will be just as calm as it was when it was just my husband and I. At that time, I was thinking lightly of moving in together. I realized that I had been naive a few days after I started living with my mother-in-law.
"Eleanor, welcome home. I hung your laundry out to dry."
It seemed my mother-in-law had done the chores while we were at work.
"Thank you."
"Please, take it easy." I thanked my mother-in-law politely and went out on the balcony to take in the laundry. There, I found that the clothes I had put aside to hand wash had also been washed together. They had shrunk, and the color had transferred onto my other clothes. I was shocked because they were my favorites. Why did she go to the trouble of washing the clothes I had left separately? I wonder if she didn't notice it when she hung them up to dry? But I couldn't blame my mother-in-law because I didn't explain it to her either. The clothes in the basket are those I'll hand wash, so I would appreciate it if you would not put them in the washing machine next time. I told my mother-in-law softly, but she didn't respond. I regretted it a little that I shouldn't have told her. My mother-in-law kept on putting the contents of the basket for hand washing in the washing machine again and again. Sometimes my wet clothes were left in the washing machine, and my clothes that was supposed to be in the laundry basket somehow ended up in the trash. By the time 2 weeks had passed, I began to think that I was being harassed. I would politely warn her, but my mother-in-law would either ignore me or just respond with an insincere, "Oh, I'm sorry." And she would repeat the same thing over and over again. I did what I could, such as washing the things I wanted to hand wash at night and telling her not to go into my room. But my mother-in-law continued to harass me in small ways. I would talk to my husband about it, but all he would say was,
"No way. Why would Mom do that? Couldn't it be some kind of misunderstanding?"
How nice it would be if it was a mistake. I was so frustrated at my husband for not believing me. Then one day, my mother-in-law told me she had cleaned the house. I looked in the trash to find my practice nail tools thrown away. I had been using them since I was a student at vocational school. It was my precious tools that I had shared many hardships with. The moment I saw them in the trash, my blood rushed to my head.
Please don't throw away my precious tools. And the laundry, too. You are always trying to harass me, aren't you? If you don't like something, tell me.
I found myself yelling at my mother-in-law.
You are a nagging wife. I just threw it away because it was dirty. If you say I'm harassing you, it sounds like it's my fault.
My mother-in-law looked at me as if she hadn't done anything wrong. I was also angry that she called my precious nail tools dirty. So I kept shouting when,
Eleanor, what are you doing?
I heard my husband's voice behind me. I didn't realize my husband had returned.
Daniel, Eleanor is being terrible.
She tells my husband things that are not true. And when I tried to deny them, he would say,
That's Eleanor's fault. She's an asshole. How can you be angry with Mom when you know she's not well?
I was so upset that my husband didn't listen to my words at all that I started to cry. Even after that, my mother-in-law continued to harass me. We had many arguments, but my husband always took her side. The relationship between my husband and I was not so good anymore. He rarely cooked for us anymore, as he used to do in the past. I wished many times that we could go back to the good life we had before we moved in together. The only saving grace is that my mother-in-law doesn't harass me when my husband is home. I'm not afraid to go home when I'm at work, and my husband has his day off. But one day, after about a year of living like this, when the three of us were having dinner, my husband suddenly said,
I'm gonna be transferred in a new place by myself next month.
I was so surprised that I immediately asked him, What? A transfer? By yourself? But all he said was that he had already made the decision. He said he thought I would object if he told me beforehand. If he knew how I felt, he should have said no. I asked him if the three of us could live at the new place. He said he would be back in a few years, so we wouldn't all have to move. He knows my mother-in-law and I don't get along. I wonder if he doesn't feel any worries about us living together. I insisted that I didn't want him to move out every day from that, but he just brushed it off. In the end, he shouted,
Shut up! I'm trying to make a living in a place I don't know, so you would keep up with it too.
And made his way to his new place of work alone. From then on, life with my mother-in-law was hell. In addition to being harassed about laundry and cleaning, my favorite dishes and clothes were thrown away, and my packages were opened without my permission. The harassment got worse by the day. My husband didn't come home at all, but every once in a while he would call to say,
You bullied Mom again, didn't you?
My mother-in-law must have said something bad about me again. I would deny it as best I could, and we would fight. At home, I would fight with my mother-in-law, and on the phone, I would fight with my husband. I was sick and tired of it. Only while I was working, I could forget about the bad things. I was so glad I had a job. It was a year after I started living with my mother-in-law. When I came home from work, my mother-in-law was eating cookies. I don't know where she got them.
These are the best cookies I've ever had,
she said to me so I could hear her. I didn't care to respond, as I was getting dinner ready when I got a phone call from my husband. I thought it was probably about my mother-in-law again, but I picked up the phone.
Did you enjoy the homemade cookies I made?
He asked me happily. My husband's phone call reminded me that it was Valentine's Day. He never came home on my birthday or our anniversary, and he never sent me a present. I wondered what had gotten into my husband to send me homemade cookies. I guess that the cookies my mother-in-law was eating were my husband's homemade cookies. The cookies she was so delighted with that she couldn't help but let out her feelings so loudly. I realized that the reason she was so loud was because she opened my package and ate them without my permission. Your mother said they were delicious, I coldly replied. What? My husband said at unease. I said, your mother took the liberty of opening the package and eating it. That's what she always does, right? I said.
Hey, are you kidding me? Why is Mom eating them?
Suddenly, my husband said in a loud voice. And at the same time, there was a loud noise behind us. My mother-in-law collapsed, but I didn't understand what happened.
I'll call you back later,
I said and hung up the phone. My mother-in-law looked very distressed and was convulsing. I called an ambulance and she was rushed to the hospital. Thanks to the emergency treatment, my mother-in-law was not seriously injured. However, I was shocked to hear the doctor's words. My mother-in-law may have eaten poisonous mushrooms. I immediately thought of the cookies my husband sent me. I didn't think it was possible to put poisonous mushrooms in cookies, but it was the only thing I could think of. I told the doctor and called the police. The police soon arrived and examined the cookies in my house. They indeed found poisonous mushrooms in the cookies my husband had sent me. I wondered if that was why he was so happy to ask me if I had eaten them. I was so upset that I didn't understand the reason of my husband's actions. I told the police where he was, and I went back to the hospital. When she woke up, I told my mother-in-law the poisonous mushrooms had been detected, and she started to cry.
Eleanor, I am so sorry for everything I've done. I was so envious of your happiness that I did nothing but be mean to you.
I didn't understand what she meant. Those cookies had poisonous mushrooms in them. I think Daniel wanted me to eat them, I said.
I knew. Daniel told me to feed them to you. I'm so sorry.
My mother-in-law apologized. She told me that she had bad-mouthed me to my husband, as she always did. Then he said he was going to send me cookies with poisonous mushrooms to punish me. My mother-in-law said that was a bit much. But my husband didn't listen, saying it was nothing life-threatening and would only make me have a slight stomachache. She also said that the cookies were supposed to be the reason I would ask for a divorce. I couldn't believe it. As far as my mother-in-law was concerned, she was suffering more just in stomachache. After my mother-in-law received the cookies from my husband, she was worried about what to do with them. My mother-in-law didn't want to turn her son into a criminal if anything should happen to me. So she chose to eat them herself. I couldn't stop shaking when I heard her story. This matter is not something you could get away with. Just an apology. Do you think you've protected me? You are an accomplice too, you know? Daniel should be arrested by now. I don't want to see your face ever again, I told her while she kept apologizing. On my way home, I got a call from the police telling me that my husband had been arrested. I rushed home, packed my belongings, and went back to my parents' house. Later, after he was released, I asked my husband to fill in the divorce papers through my lawyer. And so, the divorce was finalized. It was also decided that I would receive alimony. The lawyer told me that my husband had been having an affair before he moved out. She said it was with a colleague at work. The reason for it was because my mother-in-law and I didn't get along well, and the atmosphere in the house was bad. Well, that's no reason to have an affair. He wanted to spend more time with his affair partner, so he'd ask for a transfer himself. He thought that if he was cold to me, I would ask for a divorce, So he started fighting me about my mother-in-law. He got tired of me not asking for a divorce and decided to commit this crime. I wonder why I had put up with it all these years. I had a little bit of hope that one day he would return to the gentle husband he had been when we were first married. But if this was the case, I wish I had asked him for a divorce sooner. I never thought that my husband's cooking, which I loved so much, would cause me such trouble. My husband was released from prison, but he was fired from his job because of this arrest. Apparently, it was originally rumored within the company that he was having an affair. And so, the woman he was having an affair with was fired along with him. She eventually has given up on him, and he is now living with his mother. Since he has a criminal record, he can't seem to find a new job. He had to spend a lot of money on the woman he had an affair with and almost has no savings. He's living poor life while borrowing money. My mother-in-law is now harassing my husband the same way she harassed me. You should get a taste of how hard it was for me. For a while, I was in a state of shock and couldn't open up to anybody. However, with the support of my family, I was able to recover. I decided to open a nail salon at home with the alimony and the money I had worked so hard to save. Since I was a student, it had been my dream to open my own nail salon someday. On the nail salon opening day, my colleagues from my former workplace came to congratulate me with flowers and gifts. No matter how hard things have been for me, I could forget about it when I was working as a nail artist. My heart is full of joy that my dream has come true. Thankfully, I have a lot of appointments. I don't have to worry about anymore or anything, and I can do the work I love. Seeing the happy faces of my customers when their nails are done is what makes me happiest.